Barack Obama just revealed more about his legacy than he probably ever intended to.
Obviously, I didn't know Charlie Kirk. I was generally aware of some of his ideas. I think those ideas were wrong.
Listen to the crowd response to that.
But that doesn't negate the fact that what happened was a tragedy and that I mourn for him and his family. Obviously,
Oh, wow. So, yeah, y'all noticed the crowd reaction, cheering at the mention of Charlie Kirk's death? And you've seen Obama, he trying to sit here and play referee, but if you listen carefully, he made it clear he thought Kirk's ideas were wrong. I mean, he was really just speaking facts. That's not healing. That's legacy defining. That's permission for division, as he knows so much about. And yet, Democrats in power, I want you to believe that this is all about unity.
That's the point. Presidents in the past, when these horrible things have happened, have always tried. They could be Ronald Reagan, they could be Bill Clinton, they could be anybody, Barack Obama. They would try to bring people together. Finger pointing is the opposite of what we should be doing, blaming one side, blaming another side, even before the facts are out. We all have to come together on this. And finger pointing hurts and exacerbates the problem, doesn't help it, doesn't improve it. That's
what Chuck Schumer literally says, be like Obama. That's the party line. Pretend Obama is the unifier while ignoring the seeds he planted. How can you claim unity when the atmosphere is so toxic, people are applauding the assassination of, okay. And even CNN insiders are calling out how dangerous the spin is. Let's go ahead and take it to Scott.
Talking about a love-torn child, a kid. This is probably his first real relationship, and somebody was disparaging the person that he loved. He sat on that building for 30 minutes before he took the shot. Why did he wait until the first word trans came up? Then he took the shot.
You think he heard it? He could hear it?
I think he could hear it. I think he also, I don't believe he was motivated politically. I think this was motivated emotionally.
Guys, the evidence here is overwhelming. He said, Charlie Kirk, I can't stand this hate anymore. I'm going to take him out. The testimony from him and the statements of his family, he had become more left-wing. He etched the statements that are made by the left about Republicans and conservatives and Charlie Kirk fascists on the bullet casings.
He made a joke about it in his last text.
Well, it doesn't sound like a joke to me because someone's dead and about to be buried.
Well,
so it doesn't sound like a joke to me. So I'm just telling you, there was an effort all weekend long on the left to try to make this guy sound like he was a conservative. That failed. That was passed around all over the weekend. That has now failed. The evidence has now come out. He was motivated by hate. He was motivated by left-wing radicalism. He got mixed up with some trans ideology in his life. We'll learn more about that, I'm sure, when more evidence and testimony comes out. We are looking around the edges of this for something other than what's staring us in the face. Left-wing radicalism got this kid. He went up to a roof and he murdered our friend, and that's what happened.
Scott Jennings wasn't having it, obviously, y'all. While CNN sat here and tried to float wild theories to water down the motive, Jennings said the obvious. The results. This is the result of left-wing radicalization and the manipulation and the brainwashing of y'all narratives. Just because y'all disagree with somebody. Period. They'll do anything to protect the narrative, even if it means insulting your intelligence. But it's not just pundits that's catching on. Everyday Americans are flipping their entire worldview because of what they've seen.
I first started listening to Charlie in 2016. I started listening to him because I was on a search. I was looking at things around me and I knew that something was off. I knew that something wasn't right. So I grew up in a Democrat household. I remember when Obama became the first black president. And yeah, the first black president.
Right.
But anyways, when that happened, I was at home and we was watching it on TV. And I remember like when we found out that he won, everybody in the house started clapping and like cheering. My mom, like she even got emotional, and I never thought my mom really cared about politics at all. So as I'm clapping right along with my family, I've always been this kind of person. I've always been the kind of person who I don't say much, but I observe more than I say. So I pay attention to things. So in that exact moment, as I'm clapping and cheering with my family, I immediately stop because I'm looking around and I'm like, why? I asked a lot of questions. I turned to my mom and I asked her, I said, Mama, why are we happy? Like, why are we cheering? And my mama said that Democrats have always been the party for black people. So I remember I took note of that. But in my mind, I was thinking, well, it doesn't seem like they've helped us much because I've seen a lot of patterns in my own family growing up, and not just in my own family, but in the black community as a whole. I pay attention and I see patterns that are not getting better, but are actually getting worse under the Democrat Party. So I took note of that, even though at this time I was in 11th grade and I didn't know nothing about politics. Fast forward to 2016 and Trump was running for president. There was so much negativity coming out of the mouth of people that I was familiar with that I was shocked. I didn't understand what was going on because, I grew up hearing nothing but good things about Trump. I mean, we saw him in the music videos, the black music videos and everything. So I was confused as to why now are we being told to dislike this man? Why now are we being told that this man is a racist? The same man who was appearing in y'all music videos? The same man that y'all spoke so highly of? Something is not right. I started asking questions. And so because I wanted understanding, I went on a search. And that is how I came across Charlie Kirk. And it was through Charlie Kirk's content that I started watching Candace Owens, Brandon Tatum, and Terrence Williams. So through Charlie Kirk's content, I started listening to 3 other voices. All 3 of them were black, and all 3 of them were close with Charlie Kirk. And that is how I started listening to their content as well. I have not ever, not once, heard Charlie Kirk say anything racist. Everything he said was spot on. Like, I can tell you that as a black person who's been black all my life. And I can tell you one thing for sure, what he was saying was straight up facts. It's just a lot of us don't want to hear it. And that's where the problem come in, because we want to be stuck in this slave victim mentality, and it is so sickening. Aren't y'all tired? You ain't never been a slave a day in your life. Your ancestors wish they had the type of freedom that you have. And you sitting around here moping and complaining, talking about somebody got you oppressed. You don't even know what being oppressed means. And you need to get over yourself.
Hey, man, and that she grew up a Democrat just like me, just like many of us in the chat. But after hearing voices like Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Brandon Tatum, whom are the exact same chain in which I grew up in terms of my conservative beliefs, how they evolved, that is. That's the part Democrats fear most, when their voters realize they've been sold that division. They've been sold, chaos and not solutions. And it's people like her that prove Obama's legacy isn't healing. It's fracturing. And that brings us right back to Obama himself. Let's get the full context here.
This lately, and frankly, coming from the White House and some of the other positions of authority that suggest, even before we had determined who the perpetrator of this evil act was, that somehow we're going to identify an enemy. We're going to suggest that somehow that enemy was at fault, and we are then going to use that as a rationale for trying to silence discussion around who we are as a country and what direction we should go.
The nerve to talk about silencing somebody's discussion.
And that's a mistake as well. And so, look, obviously I didn't know Charlie Kirk. I was generally aware of some of his ideas. I think those ideas were wrong. But that doesn't negate the fact that what happened was a tragedy and that I mourn for him and his family. He's a young man with 2 small children and a wife who obviously, and a huge number of friends and supporters who cared about him. And so we have to extend grace.
Let me ask y'all this. Do y'all believe him when he says he didn't know Charlie Kirk? I call BS. If Obama didn't know him, Barry knew him.
Supporters who cared about him. And So we have to extend grace to people during their period of mourning and shock. We can also, at the same time, say that I disagree with the idea that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a mistake. That's not me politicizing the issue. It's making an observation about who are we as a country. I can say that I disagree with the suggestion that my wife or Justice Jackson does not have adequate brain processing power. I can say that I disagree that Martin Luther King was awful. I can disagree with some of the broader suggestions of that liberals and Democrats are promoting a conspiracy to displace whites and replace them by ushering in illegal immigrants. Those are all topics that we have to be able to discuss honestly and forthrightly, while we still insist that in that process of debate, we respect other people's right to say things that we...
All I can say is Twitter files. Like, bro, just
profoundly disagree with. That's how we should approach this. Now, the last point I'll make on this, or building on a point I made earlier, I've been very impressed with Governor Cox in Utah and how he's approached some of these issues. I suspect Governor Cox and I disagree on a whole bunch of stuff. He is a Republican, a self-professed conservative Republican. But in his response to this tragedy, as well as his history of how he engages with people who are political adversaries, he has shown, I think, that it is possible for us to disagree while abiding by a basic code of how we should engage in public debate. I think your own governor here, Josh Shapiro, has done the same thing. When I was president, in the aftermath of tragedies, when Dylan Roof went into a black church and, based on his own words, shot a group of folks who were engaged in Bible study and who had invited him in. And according to him, it was for racist reasons. As President of the United States, my response was not, who may have influenced this troubled young man to engage in that kind of violence, and now let me go after my political opponents and use that. George Bush, again, I don't agree with him on a lot of stuff, but he is a good, gracious man, and one of the, I thought, most commendable things that he did after 9/11, the most horrific thing to happen to the United States during the course of my lifetime, in my memory, in the aftermath of this terrible tragedy, made a point. We are going to go after the people who perpetrated this. But he explicitly went out of his way to say, we are not at war against Islam, and systematically and repeatedly talked about how we can't use this as a way to divide and target fellow Americans. And so when I hear not just our current president, but his aides, who have a history of calling political opponents vermin, enemies, who need to be targeted, that speaks
Let's speed this up, y'all. I'm getting annoyed.
to a broader problem that we have right now, and something that we're going to have to grapple with, all of us, whether we're Democrats, Republicans, Independents. We have to recognize that on both sides, undoubtedly, there are people who are extremists and who say things that are contrary to what I believe are America's core values. But I will say that those extreme views were not in my White House. I wasn't embracing them. I wasn't empowering them. I wasn't putting the weight of the United States government behind extremist views. And that is when we have the weight of the United States government behind extremist views, we've got a problem.
Notice the move. Start with violence is tragic, sliding Kirk's ideas were wrong. Then pivot to scolding Trump. That's not unity, man. That's the legitimization, right? Wrapped up as condolence. Man, you got news outlets who had him stressing disagreement with Charlie's views in the same breath as the morning. That's a framing device, not a unifier's eulogy. He says today's division is Trump's fault and touts himself as the model of restraint and guardrails. The nerve. This is the same politician who told supporters to get in their face and joked about the Chicago way, knife to a fight, we bring a gun. Those are his words from 2008. Documented by mainstream outlets. In Erie, he contrasts his White House with what he paints as today's extreme views. But even in this speech, he's not modeling neutrality at all. He narrows blame to one side and calls Trump's rhetoric out while, brushing his own era as normal keeping. You know, Smith Monarch. America just watched a masterclass in reputation control. Obama condemned the violence. Good. Then he rewrote the moral ledger so that his era is noble. Your voice is extreme. And Trump alone owns the blame. Meanwhile, Charlie died in the college debate. You know what I mean? Like on the college debate stop. The exact people we're told democracy happens. If you're tired of leaders using tragedy to settle old scores, man, make sure y'all share this video. Argue back without violence and refuse the frame that says your convictions make you dangerous. Let's put Smith-Mont Act in the comment section if you made it to the end. Y'all be safe. Please go check on a friend today. You can quite literally be saving their life. Peace.